Long before Rome rose from its 7 hills, the land of Latium was wild and full of secrets. Forests stretched like endless cathedrals of oak and laurel, rivers murmured songs that only the gods could fully understand, and the stars seemed closer, brighter, as though they leaned down to listen to human dreams. In this land lived Janus, the god of beginnings and endings, guardian of doors and thresholds. He was not like the thunderous Jupiter or the radiant Apollo. Janus was quiet, contemplative, his 2 faces always gazing in opposite directions. One looked to the past, into the memories of what had been, the other looked forward, into what was yet to come. One evening, as twilight spread across the Alban hills, Janus sat upon a stone archway that marked the entrance to an abandoned village. The villagers had left long ago, leaving their hearths cold and their wells dry. Yet Janus remained, for every doorway belonged to him, even those that no longer welcomed footsteps. The wind rustled gently, carrying the fragrance of thyme and myrtle. From the shadows of the woods, a soft voice arose. "Why do you linger here, two-faced one?" It was a nymph of the spring nearby, her hair shimmering like flowing water, her eyes pale as moonlight. She approached barefoot, the grass bending beneath her. Janus turned both faces toward her, one smiling faintly, the other solemn. "Because every ending must be guarded," he said. "Even an empty village deserves a keeper of doors. What has been forgotten still carries echoes." The nymph tilted her head, curious. "Do you hear them?" Janus closed his eyes, and for a moment, the air grew hushed. Then, faintly, as if carried from another world, the sound of children laughing, women pounding grain, and men calling across the fields rose and faded, like a dream dissolving in dawn. "Yes," Janus whispered. "I hear them all. Time does not silence, it only layers." The nymph stepped closer, her voice softer now. "Then you are lonely, god of thresholds. Shall I sit with you tonight, so the past does not weigh too heavy on your shoulders?" Janus inclined both heads in gratitude. "Yes. Sit with me, river daughter. Perhaps you will help me tell their stories, for stories are doors too, and they must remain open." And so the first night began, with Janus and the nymph seated by the ruins, watching the stars emerge one by one. The night deepened, and as the nymph and Janus sat among the crumbling stones, a silver light spilled across the land. It was softer than the sun, yet more commanding than fire. It turned the leaves into pale blades and the streams into ribbons of glass. The nymph looked up and gasped. "She walks tonight." Across the high ridge came Diana, goddess of the moon and the hunt. She wore a tunic of pale silver, her bow slung across her shoulder, and behind her padded 3 silent hounds with eyes like burning coals. Wherever she stepped, the night seemed to sharpen, alive with watchful clarity. Janus rose from the archway and bowed with both faces. "Diana, mistress of wild paths. What brings you to these forsaken stones?" Diana's gaze swept over the empty huts, the broken walls, the weeds reclaiming the streets. Her voice was calm, but it carried an edge, like the pull of a drawn bowstring. "Even ruins have their spirits. I come to see whether they mourn or whether they sleep." The nymph trembled a little at her presence. "They mourn," she whispered. Their voices drift still, faint and sorrowful. Diana's eyes softened, and she knelt to press her hand upon the cracked earth. The silence around them deepened, and then, from beneath the soil, a faint shimmer rose, like mist touched with moonlight. The shapes of the departed villagers flickered into being, women carrying baskets, elders bent with age, children running with reeds in hand. Ghostly, fragile, yet full of yearning. The nymph hid her face, but Janus watched without fear. "See, Diana? The past breathes on. I keep the doorway, and you light the path." Diana turned her face toward him. "But who will guide them to peace? A threshold can guard, a huntress can witness, but they need song to soothe them." From the shadows of the woods, there came then the strum of a lyre, gentle as a lullaby. A figure approached, young, bright-eyed, crowned with ivy leaves. His step was light, his smile half playful, half sorrowful. It was no god of thunder or war but the soft-footed Orpheus, the singer whose music charmed even stones and rivers. "Perhaps," Orpheus said, plucking a chord that made the stars shiver, "what they need tonight is not silence, nor vigilance, but melody." He sat among them, and the ruins glowed with the first strains of his song. The spirits leaned forward as though drawn by invisible threads, their eyes filled with the memory of life. Orpheus let his fingers dance across the lyre, coaxing sounds as soft as drifting clouds. The melody was not grand or triumphant, but tender, woven from sighs of wind and rustling of leaves. Each note seemed to fall like dew upon the forgotten stones. The spirits of the village, pale outlines of what once had been flesh and laughter, paused in their endless wandering. A child ghost dropped the reed he carried, an old woman straightened her back, her eyes suddenly clear. They turned toward Orpheus as if toward a hearth newly kindled. Janus stood watchful, his past-gazing face wet with tears, though his future-gazing one remained solemn. "You give them warmth," he murmured. The nymph clasped her hands as though the sound itself were prayer. How can mortal fingers carry such immortality? Diana's gaze was unreadable, but her hounds lay down upon the grass, ears tilted, lulled by the harmony. Even the moon itself seemed to lean closer, bathing Orpheus in white fire. The singer began to hum words beneath the melody, soft verses about home, about bread broken at long tables, about children sleeping while mothers kept watch. He did not sing of glory, nor of conquest, but of the tiny, eternal threads of love that bind mortal days. One by one, the spirits' outlines thinned, their features melting into silver mist. They were not dragged nor forced, but gently invited, as if Orpheus' music opened a hidden path for them. A child giggled once more, then dissolved into the night air. A farmer raised his hand in farewell before fading into starlight. The ruins grew quieter, lighter, less burdened. At last, only silence remained. Orpheus strummed one final chord, letting it ring until the air itself swallowed it. Then he sighed, his eyes moist. "It is done," he said. "They have gone where song can guide them." Janus touched the archway, feeling the emptiness behind the threshold. "The door has closed, but gently. You have spared them the weight of lingering." Diana stepped forward, her silver tunic glinting. "And you, Orpheus, your song heals not only them. It heals this land. Come. Walk with me into the woods. There are other places heavy with memory, and your music may ease them." Orpheus rose, slinging his lyre across his back. If the huntress commands, the singer follows. The nymph smiled shyly, stepping back into her spring. "Return, Orpheus. My waters will always echo your notes." The two immortals, huntress and musician, turned toward the shadowed forest, their forms glowing faintly in the moonlight. Behind them, Janus lingered at the ruins, both faces watching, the past at rest, the future unwritten. The forest thickened as Diana and Orpheus pressed deeper into its heart. Oaks twisted like ancient guardians, their roots knotted into shapes resembling slumbering beasts. The night air smelled of pine and damp moss, carrying the low murmur of streams unseen. Moonlight barely touched the ground. Instead, the darkness was alive with glimmers, fireflies drifting like sparks from invisible flames. Orpheus walked silently, fingers brushing the strings of his lyre now and then, producing notes like accidental sighs. Diana, taller, sure-footed, moved as if the trees themselves parted to let her pass. At length, they came to a clearing where the earth was soft with fallen leaves and the air trembled with unseen energy. Here stood an altar of uncut stone, worn by centuries of offerings. Around it hung wreaths of ivy and bones of deer, tokens left by hunters who sought favor. A deep chuckle rumbled through the clearing. "Well, well. The Moon Maiden walks with a singer. What rare company for a lonely god." From behind the altar emerged Faunus, the spirit of forests and wild places. He was broad-shouldered, his skin the color of bark, his beard tangled with leaves. Horns curled from his brow, and his legs ended not in human feet but in the cloven hooves of a goat. His amber eyes glowed like embers in the dark. Diana's hand hovered near her bow, but she did not draw it. "Faunus," she said coolly. "We disturb no shrine. We seek only to pass through." Faunus grinned, showing teeth sharp as acorns. "Pass through? In my grove? Nothing passes without a gift. Even moonlight must pay its toll." Orpheus stepped forward, bowing slightly, his voice gentle. "Then take music as gift. It costs me little, but it weaves peace." Faunus tilted his head. "Music? Ha! The birds sing for free. What can a mortal voice give that the owls and crickets cannot? Orpheus strummed his lyre, soft but steady, letting the notes spiral upward like vines. He sang not of hearth or home this time, but of roots grasping soil, of rivers nourishing groves, of the wild freedom that no wall could contain. His melody carried the sense of spring rains, the hush of winter snows, the joy of deer leaping through tall grass. Faunus froze, his amber eyes widening. His hooves stamped unconsciously to the rhythm. His breath came heavy, and the tangled beard trembled. At last, he let out a booming laugh. By the oak's heart! You catch even me in your snare, singer. Keep your gift, but share your song. Stay a while in this grove, and let your music twine with the forest. Diana lowered her hand from her bow. Then let it be so. But no tricks, Faunus. He is under my protection. Faunus bowed with mock flourish. The huntress commands, the forest obeys. Sit, then, and listen. Tonight, even the wolves will pause to hear. And so Orpheus played in the grove of Faunus, while Diana's silver gaze kept watch and the forest itself leaned closer, branches swaying without wind. The grove of Faunus glowed dimly with firelight. A great oak, hollow at its base, released a gentle flame, not destructive, but sacred, burning without consuming the wood. Around this living hearth, Diana seated herself upon a stone, her bow resting across her knees, while Orpheus plucked soft chords that mingled with the crackle of fire. Faunus stretched his broad arms, his horns casting strange shadows across the trees. His voice carried the weight of countless seasons. Long before Rome had kings, long before Alba Longa stood upon its ridge, this land was a cradle of gods. You mortals remember some names, forget others, but the soil remembers all. He lifted a carved staff, striking it gently upon the earth. The ground vibrated, and shadows formed upon the flames, shapes that moved as though alive. First came Janus, the doorkeeper, he who holds the past and future, whose two faces see both ways. Without him, no beginning finds its path, no ending closes in peace. Orpheus played a low note, remembering the god at the ruins. Diana inclined her head in acknowledgement. Then came Saturn, Faunus continued, his eyes gleaming. Once king of a golden age, when fields bore fruit without toil and mortals lived without hunger or fear. But the age ended, as all ages must. He fled, dethroned, and found refuge in Latium, hiding in the shadows of hills. The people welcomed him, and he taught them to sow and reap, to build and thrive. Even gods can fall, but even in exile, greatness blooms. The shadow shifted, showing a tall figure scattering seeds across the land, while mortals bent gratefully to gather them. Diana's gaze lingered on the fire. I have walked in fields where his memory lingers. The soil still feels his hand. Faunus smiled. Yes. And then there is Ops, Earth Mother, Saturn's bride. She sleeps beneath every furrow, cradles every seed. When you bite bread, you bite into her flesh. When you drink wine, you sip her blood. She is silence, yet she is everywhere. The flames curled into the shape of a woman lying beneath the ground, her hair sprouting into golden stalks of wheat. Orpheus plucked a brighter chord, his voice threading through. Then every loaf is a hymn, every vineyard a prayer. Faunus laughed approvingly, his hooves striking the earth in rhythm. Well spoken, singer. And do not forget my daughter, Karna, goddess of hinges, protector of thresholds. While Janus watches the doorway, she guards its movement. Without hinges, no door opens, no door closes. Mortals seldom honor her, but every creak of a door is her whisper. The shadows formed into countless swinging doors, from humble huts to great temples, all moving upon unseen hinges. At this, Diana lifted her eyes, silver and sharp. You speak with reverence, Faunus, yet also with bitterness. Do you envy these greater gods? Faunus chuckled, deep and rough. Envy? No. The wild does not envy the city, the wolf does not envy the shepherd. I am the forest's laughter, the goat's leap, the whisper that turns men from the safety of roads into shadowed groves. My worshippers are hunters, wanderers, dreamers who lose their way. That is enough. The fire hissed, sparks spiraling upward like stars. Silence fell, broken only by Orpheus' lyre. Diana studied Faunus carefully, as though measuring truth in his words. At last, Faunus leaned closer, his grin sharp again. But beware, Moon Maiden. Not all gods are so gentle. Some stir beneath rivers, some hunger in caverns, waiting for voices to call them back. The soil remembers, but not all memories are kind. The fire dimmed for a moment, as if shuddering. Even the hounds at Diana's side raised their heads and growled low. The fire in the hollow oak sputtered, its steady flame turning momentarily blue. Faunus leaned forward, shadows deepening the lines of his face. His horns caught the flicker, and his eyes gleamed like molten amber. Even Orpheus' fingers hesitated upon the lyre, as if the strings themselves sensed an unease. There are gods mortals speak of with open lips, Faunus began, his voice low and rough, and there are those whose names are whispered only in darkness, if at all. These are the hidden ones, the guardians of dread and silence. The flames writhed into shapes, first a river winding through black caverns. Take, for instance, the god Tiberinus. He sleeps beneath the great river, the Tiber. To mortals he appears kindly, a protector of fishermen, a giver of fertile floods. But water is never only kind. When storms rage, when bridges crumble and bodies are carried away, it is his anger they meet. His embrace is both life and death. Do not forget that every river can drown as easily as it nourishes. The fire shifted, showing men swept away by foaming currents, their hands reaching upward before dissolving into sparks. Orpheus shivered slightly, though he plucked a trembling cord to mirror the vision. Diana remained silent, her silver gaze fixed on Faunus, her hand resting on the neck of her bow. And then there is Mania, Faunus said, his grin fading into grimness. Goddess of the dead, mistress of ghosts. She walks not in temples, but in graveyards, in empty houses where voices linger, in caves where no bird dares to sing. It is said she cradles the spirits of children, rocking them in eternal slumber. But not all her touch is gentle. She drives men mad when they trespass in forbidden places, filling their ears with cries from beyond. The fire's shadows grew into pale children reaching upward, only to sink again into darkness. Orpheus pressed his lyre close to his chest, his voice faint. I have heard whispers of her, when I sought Eurydice in Hades. Faunus nodded solemnly. Yes. Even you, singer, brushed her veil. Diana's hounds stirred uneasily, their growls low. She stroked their heads, steady but tense. Do not fear too much, Faunus continued, though his voice was now harsher. Fear sharpens, but terror blinds. Mortals have always lived between two truths, the gods above who bless them, and the shadows beneath who remind them of their limits. Without night, there is no dawn. Without silence, no song. The fire softened again, returning to a gentler golden glow. Faunus leaned back, folding his arms across his chest. But enough of darkness for tonight. The hidden gods stir when their stories grow too long. Better we let them rest. Diana's eyes lingered on the flames a moment longer. Rest, or wait? Faunus only smiled, his sharp teeth glinting, and did not answer. Orpheus, sensing the heaviness, struck a lighter melody, notes that skipped like sunlight over water. Slowly the tension in the grove lifted, though the memory of those shadowed names lingered in the cool air. Orpheus sat quietly for a moment, the firelight trembling across his face. His fingers rested on the lyre's strings as if they weighed more than stone. Diana tilted her head, her silver eyes unreadable, while Faunus leaned forward, curiosity flickering like hunger in his grin. You speak of hidden gods, Faunus, Orpheus said softly, but I have seen their halls. I have walked among shadows deeper than your caverns. His hand strummed once low, mournful, and the clearing hushed. Even the leaves stilled, and the night creatures paused their hidden rustlings. I loved a woman, Eurydice, he began. His voice was clear, but every word bore sorrow's weight. Her laughter was the first music I ever knew. Her step was lighter than the doe, her eyes brighter than the dawn. But one day, while the meadow crowned itself in summer, she was bitten by a serpent. I held her in my arms, but her warmth fled, her voice fell silent. Death stole her faster than my song could plead. The lyre echoed a trembling chord, like wind through a hollow reed. The fire's shadows shaped themselves into the figure of a woman, delicate, fading with each flicker. Orpheus' voice deepened. I would not accept it. I took my lyre and descended into Hades itself. Past the gates of Cerberus, who howled yet bent to my melody, past the rivers of Lethe and Cocytus, where the dead wept and forgot themselves. My song opened every door. Even the Furies, whose whips taste only of rage, shed tears and lowered their lashes. Faunus's grin had vanished. He stroked his beard, muttering, "A mortal among the deathless, few tales are darker." Orpheus continued, his eyes glassy with memory. At last, I stood before the throne of Hades and Persephone. I played with every drop of grief in me, every breath of love I carried. And they listened. Even stone would have cracked. The queen herself wept, and the Lord of Shadows granted me a mercy. Eurydice could return with me, if I never looked back until we reached the living air. Diana leaned forward, her voice sharper than an arrow. But you did. Yes, Orpheus whispered, clutching the lyre as if it could shield him. I did. We climbed the narrow path. I heard her footsteps behind me, light as petals. Yet doubt gnawed me. What if the gods had tricked me? What if she was not there? At the very mouth of the cave, I turned. And in that heartbeat, I saw her, her eyes wide with love, her lips about to speak. Then she was gone, drawn back into shadow. Forever. The lyre gave a final note, fragile and broken, that seemed to hang in the air like